Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. This is the post-game podcast from the Timberwolves win over the Phoenix Suns in Game 2, going up 2-0 in the series. It was ultimately a dominant performance keyed by Jaden McDaniels and Rudy Gobert. We'll talk about just how good they were really on both ends of the floor, and also the Wolves' well-rounded, well-balanced offensive attack. It's all coming on the show. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Happy hump day. And it is a victory Wednesday, a huge Game 2 win for Minnesota. Of course, teams that go up 2-0, higher seeds that go up 2-0 in best-of-7 series in the NBA playoffs win 93% of the time. They win the series. So monstrous for the Timberwolves to get this win. Lots to get to today. We're going to talk lots of Jaden. We're going to talk lots of Rudy. We're going to sing the praises of the Timberwolves defense and also of Chris Finch and the coaching staff. I also want to talk about the Wolves offense on a night where nobody individually, other than ultimately Jaden McDaniels, really had it going, but the Wolves still managed to be fairly efficient offensively and score when they needed to for the most part throughout the game. So a lot to get to today. A big thank you off the top for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV, and you can follow on X at Locked On T Wolves and also at Beecken. That's with two B's, two E's, CK. All right, man, a lot of places to start here. First of all, this game right at the beginning it actually reminded me a little bit of game one of New Orleans, Oklahoma City on Sunday, where it was just kind of like clank after clank, relatively open shots, a lot of activity and energy in the building and on the court, but like guys just missing shots, both the Wolves and the Suns missing open shots early. And the story of the first quarter was none of the stars got going offensively, right? Like Devin Booker was missing open shots. Kevin Durant was missing shots. The Wolves were being aggressive defensively. Phoenix was actually playing really hard. And outside of Minnesota got to, I think, an 8-0 lead to start the game. It was 8-0. And it felt like they could just steamroll the Suns. That first Frank Vogel timeout, from that point forward, the rest of the first quarter, Phoenix was the aggressor. Phoenix was more physical. And it worried me for what the rest of the game was going to look like. Minnesota still managed to have a 3-point lead at the end of the first quarter, which, given that nobody got going offensively for Minnesota, was a good thing. But given that the stars for Phoenix didn't get going offensively either, it felt a bit tenuous. Add on top of that Karl-Anthony Towns picked up his third personal foul in the final minute of the first quarter. And it felt like the Wolves were just going to try and hang on and tread water in the second quarter. And that's ultimately what happened. And early in the game, first and second quarter, offensive rebounding for Phoenix was a massive deal. And for the game, they ended up getting 11 offensive rebounds. I think in game one, they had only 3. And just to kind of fast forward to the end here, the Wolves ended up only being a -2 on the glass in this game because they had such an edge in the second half. It was ugly early. Phoenix got a bunch of kind of rebounds in the mid-range on some long missed jumpers. Minnesota's guards were not doing a great job of kind of pinching in and grabbing those loose balls off of long rebounds. And Phoenix got some second chance opportunities. I should also say, rewinding a bit, again, I'm all over the place right now. Cat played great defense at Kevin Durant before the third foul. And then as the Wolves, to credit the Wolves defense, as difficult as things were offensively for Minnesota for a while, the Wolves were not afraid of anything. And I want to spend a lot of time on that today here in a minute. But they were happy to switch. We don't care there was even a point in the fourth quarter of this game where Rudy Gobert it was when it was like a 12-point game with, 5 minutes to play or something like that. There was no action, no switch, anything in transition. Gobert just picked up Devin Booker and was like, I'm just going to guard him. And he got off a decent contest and Booker missed a 3. It was just like kind of the ultimate, maybe a little bit overconfident, hey, things are going well here. I'm guarding in space a lot in this game. I'm just going to do it. It was like right in front of Chris Finch. And I'm sure he was thinking like, why couldn't you just switch to somebody coming down the court? But it was that type of a game defensively where Minnesota was so confident with what they were doing and the scheme that they were playing that they were just kind of like, it's not a great strategy to dare Phoenix to shoot. They weren't literally doing that, but it kind of felt like, hey, we know we're getting off good contests. You're going to hit some tough ones. I mean, the very first make of the game for Phoenix was that shot clock beater in the left corner, Grayson Allen buried in the corner, good contest from, I think it was McDaniels or Towns maybe, and Allen makes the shot. There were a couple of those earlier where it's like, all right, fine, you tip your cap. Good shooters are going to make tough shots occasionally, right? There was a lot of that in this game that kept Phoenix afloat, but there were also some missing of some relatively open shots. And I think it was just the level of physicality, length, activity for the Wolves that kept the Suns reeling in this game. At halftime, Minnesota was only down one. They had a really strong close of the second quarter, and it's easy to forget this because of the way it finished and because of how dominant the Wolves were in the third quarter again specifically. But think back with me to the middle of the second quarter and just how dire things started to look, right? Minnesota's down 40-34. Actually, no, 42-34. They're down 8 at the midway point with 6 minutes left in the second quarter. Cat's been on the bench for the whole quarter with the foul trouble. And Jaden McDaniels hits a 3 in the right corner, drops it to a 5-point game. Durant hits a couple of free throws, but a couple of possessions later, Conley hits a 3-pointer. Now it's a 4-point game. And then you have the little dust up between McDaniels and Bradley Beal where, Beal gets called for the personal. After a review, McDaniels gets a technical. Booker makes the technical. It's a 7-point game again. And you go back and forth over the final couple of minutes. It's back to 6 points with 2.5 minutes left, and the Wolves string together multiple stops in a row. Durant misses a 3. The Wolves get a couple of cracks at it with offensive rebounds, but keep missing. They get a stop on the other end once again. Gobert hits a couple of free throws. Now it's a 3-point game. You force Beal into a miss on the other end. McDaniels comes down and hits a jumper with 30 seconds left, or really more of a floater in the lane. And now it's a 1-point game. You stop Nurkic at the end and almost get a buzzer beater from Alexander Walker. But just that 4-minute stretch, cutting it from 6 points to 1 point, gave the Wolves and gave the building some momentum where it felt like now, we won that first half, right? When Ant scored, what did Ant have in the first half? 5 points or 4 points or something? One made field goal, I believe. Cat had 2 points. I think Ant had 5 at halftime. Cat had 2 points. And yeah, you're only down 1. Cat hasn't played in the second quarter at all. So coming into halftime, you actually feel pretty good about where you're sitting. And then sure enough, the third quarter ended up being, it didn't happen right away, but it ended up being very similar in some ways. I guess Saturday's win was more Ant just kind of going nuclear. But this just became, Cat made some shots. Cat got rolling. The Wolves built a mini lead. I think it was just a bucket after Cat hit that 3. And then it was back and forth a little bit. But the close of the third quarter, that's when Ant came alive for just a little bit. He got to the line a couple of times. They finally got Phoenix into the penalty. They got aggressive going to the basket and played exactly how this Wolves offense needs to play, which is Ant putting his head down, getting to the basket, making the right basketball play, either shooting and drawing a foul or kicking it out to a teammate. And they hit some tough shots late in the third quarter, and they end up going to the fourth quarter up 7. And again, it was tied midway through the third quarter. It was 60-60 with 7 minutes left. And actually, Phoenix took a 3-point lead right back. Remember, Cat made that 3 on the left wing. Suns hit back-to-back threes, and now Wolves are down 3. Finch takes the timeout, which I thought was a really smart timeout. Right after Phoenix, Beal hits a 3 to tie the game after the Cat 3. Ant takes a poor pull-up jumper in transition, a 3-pointer, and then Booker hits a 3 to put them up 3. Finch calls a timeout. He puts in Naz Reid. He puts in Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and the Wolves go on, what did it end up being? An 8-0 run? No, a 10-0 run. Take that back. A 12-0 run after that timeout by Finch. It was 63-60 Phoenix. Finch calls a timeout. The Wolves go on a 12-0 run to put themselves up 9, and then again, ultimately up 7 going to the fourth quarter. Just an incredible response from Minnesota. Late second quarter, mid to late third quarter is where this game was won for Minnesota. And it was dealing with the adversity of all of the things that happened in this game. The foul trouble for Cat early. Ant not playing all that well offensively. I should say not making shots. I thought he played well. We'll talk a little more about that. But the most important thing about this win for Minnesota, yes, the offense was good enough, but it was the defense of Jaden McDaniels and Rudy Gobert and we'll call it the what's the right word I'm trying to use? Like basically the picking your spots offense of Rudy Gobert and Jaden McDaniels. The dare offense, right? The Suns were daring those guys to beat them, and that's exactly what happened in game 2. I want to talk about Jaden and Rudy specifically, and we'll do that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at DoorDash. Do you want to make your mom smile? Start Mother's Day with flowers or surprise her with gifts from the brands that she loves, delivered the very same day with DoorDash. Does your mom have a sweet tooth? Maybe she's a tech enthusiast or a beauty connoisseur, or maybe she's outdoorsy. No matter what she's into, you can make her smile with a fruit or flower bouquet, makeup, tech gear, workout wear, and more. Pair flowers with a gift card so she can celebrate any way she wants. Is she a bookworm? Try a bookstore gift card. Does she love a good latte? Get a gift card to her favorite coffee shop. You can't go wrong. Get thoughtful gifts she deserves with the convenience you need. Choose same-day delivery or schedule a week ahead for when flowers and gifts should arrive to her door with DoorDash. Mother's Day is just around the corner. Shop with savings that would make her proud. With a Dash Pass membership, you'll save with a $0 delivery fee and reduced service fees on eligible orders from Dash Pass merchants that meet the minimum subtotal. Other fees, including service fees, apply, and terms apply. Get all your Mother's Day gifts all in one place and get 50% off your next order up to $15 when you spend $15 or more on your next flower, convenience, grocery, or retail order right now with code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA. Order using DoorDash today. Terms apply. Again, LOCKEDONNBA is your code. You get 50% off your next order up to $15 when you spend $15 or more. That's LOCKEDONNBA. Order using DoorDash today. Terms apply. Today's episode is also brought to us by our friends over at Monopoly Go. We've all been there, either as a player or as a fan. It's halftime. The scoreboard might not be looking good. Wasn't the case in this game for the Wolves. They're only down 1 at the half, like we talked about. But in this case, which has happened, not often to the Wolves this year, but you feel low. You're not sure that you or the Wolves can pull out a win. That's when you dig deep, lift your head up, and say to yourself, time to get back in the game, pull off some bank heists, and take as much of my friends' money as I possibly can. That's right. The smash hit mobile game, Monopoly Go, lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches and the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly you love, but on your phone anytime with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies. There's so much to do. Play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards, make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball, or charge other players rent for your iconic properties. You can even work with your friends to crack open community chests. And in tournaments, you can get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put on your game face, and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. Do you watch Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? If you do, no doubt you have to turn down the volume because of all the shouting. Instead, make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, let's talk Jaden and Rudy. Take you back a little to the first half, really second quarter when Cat was on the bench with foul trouble, and then into the third quarter. I want to give a brief shout out to Naz Reid because Naz ended up on Kevin Durant a couple of times, and I thought he did a phenomenal job. Third quarter, Rudy ended up on Kevin Durant a couple of times out on the perimeter in space. Both times forced a Durant miss at the basket. I think there might have been a third time where Durant scored. No. He didn't. Gobert shut him down a couple of possessions in a row. Also in the third quarter, Yusuf Nurkic decided, hey, I'm going to take Gobert into the post because that seems like a good idea. He scored once, missed the other two shots badly. Late in the game, Drew Eubanks, for some reason, was feeling himself after he played some decent minutes, in his first couple stints in the game. When the Suns were down double digits in the fourth quarter, they put him in, and Gobert completely dominated him. Rudy Gobert in this game, I don't know. Like I'm struggling to put the words together for how good he was defensively. He did everything. Like for the most part, the Wolves still want to play drop coverage, right? That's generally what they're trying to do. It's generally what they prefer to do. It's what Rudy prefers to do, and he's great at it. He did that in this game, and it was effective. Early in the game, the Suns could not get off a shot. As soon as he left the floor, when Nas came in and Rudy gets that rest through the first quarter, the Suns hit a couple of mid-rangers because Gobert's his feel for play and drop and his length, his reach is so good that Devin Booker never felt comfortable. It was just so good, right? For a while, they depending on who had the ball in their hands, the Wolves were actually showing they were basically playing Gobert at the level for stretches that don't do a ton of that, and it worked. And he straight switched onto at different points in the game all three of the Suns' quote unquote big three: Durant, Booker, Bradley Beal. He had a couple of strong moments against Booker. I mentioned the one late in the game, but when the game was very much still in the balance, the defense he played in Kevin Durant was phenomenal. And then like just literally everywhere, like he was doing everything the Timberwolves asked of him. And the idea that like, and I know that there's been some articles written recently about how Gobert has continually changed his body and he's done some of the other off the court stuff to try and get his mind right, add other elements to his game, the fitness, the yoga, the, nutrition, all that stuff. Surely that plays a part. There's no question. So I'm not necessarily saying like Utah used him wrong because he was still defensive player of the year twice in a Jazz uniform, right? Twice. But Gobert only played drop in Utah. And that was in part what fed the narrative. Oh, he got played off the floor in the playoffs before against the Clippers and against the Mavs. He didn't get quote unquote played off the floor as much as I've talked about this a lot on the show. The Jazz didn't have perimeter defenders anywhere like what the Wolves have now. And only if you only have one good defender or one plus defender, you can't beat a team playing 5 out that's making threes. It's just not possible. However, Gobert was never comfortable doing anything besides drop, and the Jazz didn't push him to do it. At least they didn't, not in practice. Like they didn't actually, I don't know what those discussions look like behind the scenes, but they didn't actually do that, right? The Wolves early on said, hey, Rudy, we're going to ask you to do stuff you're not comfortable with. And Rudy Gobert, to his credit, through and through, has done it. He did literally everything in this game. You cannot ask more out of a dude that's 7'2", and, like I was told he was on the wrong side. I was told he was on, downhill slope of his career, right? I mean, I guess he is because he's over 30, but like I was told he was regressing after last year. That's what we were all told, right? Instead, he turns in an 18-9 performance with 3 steals in this game, 6 of 9 from the field. And a guy that's like 62% career free throw shooter, something like that, is 6 of 7 in each of the first 2 games of the playoffs from the free throw line. Rudy Gobert does not 64% career free throw shooter. And 6 of 7 in each of the first 2 games. Rudy was the best player on the floor. And Jaden McDaniels was actually probably tied with it for how good Jaden was. Jaden was also phenomenal. And I tweeted something out around halftime that the Wolves had more combined no, yes plays between Jaden and Rudy in the first half than they did points from Cat and Ant combined, which is true. I think those guys had 7 combined points, Cat and Ant did at halftime. Rudy had 2 instances where he got a steal and then did something crazy in the open floor. The first one was where he was called for a charge, but it was overturned into a blocking foul and an and one, which was the correct call. And then another one where he had the ball, threw it away, got it back, almost threw it away again, but it got knocked out of bounds by the Suns. Jaden had a couple of those where like the Suns are trying to bait him into trying to score, and he took the bait. There was only, I think, one where it was actually just a really bad shot, and the others he actually made the shots. So, credit both of those guys. I alluded to this at the end of the first segment. The Suns clearly, and this is, I don't necessarily agree with this part of the sentiment, which is make someone besides Ant and Cat beat us offensively, right? They're going to double Cat when they can. They're going to load up on Ant aggressively. And they obviously would prefer not to allow, Nickeil Alexander-Walker to shoot corner threes, right? But they want to make Rudy Gobert finish in the paint or at the free throw line. They want to make Mike Conley put the ball on the floor and score, and he did. And we haven't talked enough about Conley. And they wanted to make Jaden McDaniels be aggressive, and he was. Now, I don't want to take anything away from this performance because Jaden was fantastic in this game. In the long run, I understand what the Suns were trying to do. And that's what the playoffs is all about. I talked about this extensively earlier in the week, and on I guess it would have been Tuesday's show. I think the playoffs are a pick your poison situation, right? And the Sun, like for instance, the Timberwolves are putting Cat on Durant and saying, "Hey, we like our chances there with the size and the length on Durant, making him work. Keep the length of McDaniels on Booker and the strength of Ant on Beal, and make Booker finish over length." He's not going to be able to draw a foul in the same way as Kevin Durant will, right? And Durant, sure enough, did draw some cheap fouls on Jaden McDaniels because that's what KD can do. McDaniels is foul prone, right? So for all those reasons, that's the calculus, and some of these national talking heads just don't get it. Why would you put Cat on Durant? Well, this is why, right? I just explained it in like 30 seconds. That's why the Wolves are doing that. And on the flip side, Phoenix's pick your poison situation is we're going to make Jaden McDaniels and Rudy Gobert beat us. And that may not be a winning proposition multiple times in a series, but when Ant happens to be having an off night and Cat is in foul trouble, the only way you're going to win this game is if those players the Suns are trying to make beat them actually can beat them. And Jaden McDaniels stepped up to the plate and knocked it out of the park in this game. 25 points on 17 shots for Jaden, 8 rebounds. He led the team in field goal attempts. He was tied for second on the team in rebounds. He led the team in scoring. Led the team in plus minus. It was a plus 24 in a game the Wolves only won by 12, and no one else in the Wolves was better than a plus 16. A exquisite Jaden McDaniels performance. I want to talk a little bit more about that. We'll do some quick studs and duds here at the end of the show. We'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and in the NHL. Of course, baseball now, we're nearly a month into the season, 3 weeks or so into the season. And FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Coming into this series, of course, the Timberwolves were favorites to win game one, but underdogs to win the series. I'm going to see if I can pull it up quick on FanDuel and see where things stand now. But I'm going to bet that now up 2-0, the Wolves are probably pretty comfortable favorites to win this series. We'll see if it's still on the board right now. Yeah, as of right now, to win the series, the Wolves are minus 480. You could have gotten them before the game tipped on Friday. What were they on Friday? I think the Wolves were like plus 110 or plus 140 or something. Slight underdogs. But still, the 3 seed as an underdog to the 6 seed was always bonkers. I said that at the time, even though my pick, I'm not running from it. My pick was Suns in 7. I knew it was going to be a good series. Like, to pick against the Wolves, for the series seemed like a crazy thing given those odds. But anyway, you could go find those minus 480 odds for the Wolves to win the series right now on FanDuel. New customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. You can bet on everything from the slap shots in the NHL playoffs to home runs to slam dunks, all in an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Today's episode is also sponsored by BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off our chest, big or small. Certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased on your life. So today I want to say how I really feel about something. You might even be thinking about the same thing this week. I complained a little about the Coach of the Year odds on Tuesday's show. Today, let's talk about the 6th man of the year. Naz Reid should win 6th man of the year. There's no question about it. I know Malik Monk is good. Naz Reid is better and had a bigger impact on a better team that is a legit title contender. And Naz Reid was awesome. He stepped in, didn't start too many games. What did he start? 12 or 14 games this year. So not too many to legitimately win the 6th man of the year award. He should be seen as, and by the way, I was listening to a national podcast recently that was talking about, I don't even remember who it was, on another team entering the game and the crowd going, Westbrook and Clippers coming to the game for the Clippers and how the crowd goes crazy. And basically no other team or player has that reaction. Naz Reid, man, the way that the fans react for Naz Reid, the Naz Reid beach towels all around town, Naz Reid, that's not why he should win 6th man of the year, but it shouldn't hurt, right? Naz Reid should win the 6th man of the year award, hands down. I recognize there are a lot of issues out there that may be more significant than that, but look, therapy looks different for everyone, just like problems look different for everyone. So even if you do have bigger problems or if there are other things in life that seem a bit more challenging, it's still important to get things off your chest every once in a while. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, a couple more Jaden thoughts here as we close out the show today. I said it was an exquisite performance. There's really no other way to say it. Like, it was a perfect Jaden McDaniels performance. The edge he played with it teetered on borderline, right? Like, he made that, I think he missed a shot in the paint, got his own rebound, missed again, and then tipped it in, and then grabbed the ball and like pounded it against his head, got called for delay of game. That was shortly before he was called for the technical in the shoving match with Booker. When Jaden McDaniels can stay right there, stay on that edge between like too much and just enough, that's kind of what you need to play in the playoffs. And Jaden was able to do that in this game. Now, don't be surprised if the Suns try and get under his skin pretty quickly in the next game. They don't want to deal with the smoke when it comes to Jaden McDaniels. They don't want him in the game. Foul trouble, technicals, whatever they got to do, they're going to try and get under his skin. But Jaden towed that line in this game and did it masterfully. 8 rebounds. Chris Finch talked after the game about how big the rebounding was. We talked earlier about overall. Phoenix had 11 offensive rebounds and out-rebounded the Wolves by only 2 for the game, but it was a huge advantage early, and second chance points were big early as well. Really, really good job by Jaden pitching in on the glass to help kind of control that advantage or limit that advantage for Phoenix to what was really negligible in terms of just a 2-rebound advantage overall on the night. Okay, studs and duds. We talked Rudy, we talked Jaden. They're obviously both studs. They were easily the 2 best players on the floor in this game. Real quick, Rudy had 18 and 9, 6 of 8 shooting, 6 of 7 at the line, 3 steals, 2 assists, and 1 block. Only 1 turnover for Rudy Gobert. Jaden had 25 and 8, 10 of 17 shooting, 2 of 4 on threes, 3 of 4 at the line, 3 assists, 1 steal, and only 1 turnover for Jaden. Jaden and Rudy each only had 1 turnover. The Wolves' other 3 starters all had at least 2 turnovers in this game. My third stud is Mike Conley. Mike was fantastic, and his performance is getting lost in the shuffle a bit. He was huge, especially in that second quarter when, again, things were on the verge of going back to what I said earlier in the show. They were down 9 or 7, I guess, at one point in that. No, I think it did get to 9 in the second quarter. Actually, hang on. I have it right here. It got to 8 in the second quarter. Wolves were down 8. And Conley I think he hit 3 straight buckets for Minnesota. Did a lot of his damage then. Did hit a big 3 in the corner late to that wasn't quite the nail in the coffin, but got us closer to that. 18 points on 7 of 13 shooting. He was 2 of 12 in game 1. Minnesota Mike wasn't going to be down for long. 18 on 13 shots, 3 of 6 on threes. Had a nice and one, made the free throw. 4 assists, 4 rebounds, 2 steals, and 2 turnovers for Mike Conley. Everyone in the Timberwolves starting lineup had at least 4 rebounds. And given that Nurkic was going to put a body on Gobert and Drew Eubanks was in there to just kind of careen around and wreak havoc, you need to rebound 5. And the Wolves did that. Those are the 3 studs for this game. I should mention Nikhil was awesome off the bench again. The 4 of 10 isn't as eye-popping, and the 10 points isn't as eye-popping as the 18 in game 1. But he had 5 assists in this game and did hit a big 3 late when the Wolves were trying to pull away. Also had a nice and one in this game. Sorry, Conley's wasn't an and one. That was a technical free throw. Nikhil's was an and one. And by the way, he was a big minus in his first stint. Alexander Walker was the first to the second quarter. I think it was a minus 12. He finished the game as a plus 14. Was really, really impactful in the second half of this game. Duds in this game, I'm only going to go Monte Morris. And I thought he struggled defensively. He was put in a tough spot, coming in off the bench at the size that he is. I know he's a solid defender, but to ask him to defend, I think he was on Booker and Durant at one point or another. He was a minus 14 in 11 minutes in this game. 5 of that was garbage time. So a minus 9 pre-garbage time. 1 of 4 from the field. Hit a layup in traffic. Missed 3 3-point shots. Otherwise didn't record a stat. So a rough game for Monte Morris. I would assume he's still going to get those 9-ish backup point guard minutes in moving forward in the series. But you never know. You might see some Jordan McLaughlin. So studs, Jaden, Rudy, Conley. Duds, Monte Morris only. One side note, I'm not going to completely take credit for the slow-mo out of the rotation prediction from Friday because I know he was hurt. Allegedly, he was available to play, and I know he was on the bench in uniform. TNT reported before the game he was available. So I don't want to he didn't play, I'm sure it was in part, but I did say that on Tuesday's show. I said, maybe he doesn't play to see how they function without Kyle Anderson in the rotation in this matchup. Give him another, ultimately it's 6 days of rest. If he doesn't play from Saturday until the following Friday, he gets 6 days of rest with the hip. You see how things go without him, and they went just fine. I know I've gotten some flack online about the idea that Kyle Anderson maybe isn't in the rotation in this series. Well, it worked out okay in this game. If he's healthy, I would expect him to see some minutes and effectively play backup point guard. But that was one of my predictions last Friday was Kyle Anderson. There would be a DNP CD on his ledger in this series. I wasn't expecting it to be game 2, but again, the injury obviously played some role in that. However much that is, I'm not sure. But I want to make sure I point that out. All right. Hard to imagine a better first 2 games for the Wolves. Winning the first game by 25, the second one by 12. Going to Phoenix, not until Friday, so another 2-day break. Grayson Allen, of course, re-injures his ankle, which is obviously unfortunate, and only ended up playing 17 minutes. And he said after the game that he was going to see how it feels Friday. Like, who knows? X-rays are negative. Maybe he tries to play Friday. So that's obviously big for Phoenix. We'll see. There's a lot to get to on Thursdays and Fridays shows. As we further dig into the series, we'll talk about other potential adjustments, all that good stuff. Later in the week on the show, we'll set you up for Friday night as well. It's a late 9:30 Central tip from Phoenix on Friday. All right. That's all we have for you today here on the show. A big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere, including YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. And you can follow on X at Locked On T-Wolves and also at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, CK. Of course, the Locked On Wolves podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.